My friends, I have something serious to tell you tonight. You see, the mythical event known as the Quackening is upon us, and that brings mud, dirt, and grime to every armored and unarmored duck out there in the wild. So, let's kick off this ceremony with some muddy textures, shall we? I'm gonna try this muddy paste from AK. It's designed for dioramas and that makes it trickier to use on armor models, but I finally discovered a few techniques that turn it into a viable weathering tool, and I hope you like the result. It's very sticky and contains a lot of pigment, which makes it excellent for scenic bases because of its strong coverage, but if you want to apply it to your model in limited amounts, let's just say it needs to be done swiftly. The paste adheres to the surface in seconds, and if you try to blend it, it's gonna leave a visible tide mark, so it's best to work in very small sections and blend these mounds of mud immediately. AK has another type of acrylic mud in their splashes range, which seems to be designed for weathering and thus more suitable, but I haven't tried it yet. Another way to get nice, natural looking gradients is by stippling the paste. Most of the product needs to be removed on a napkin, of course, otherwise it's gonna be hard to control. And, of course, even this layer can be smoothed out with water, but again, the working time is very short, like less than a half minute. A small side effect of my prolonged texturing session was this paste which started to dry up. Turns out it's excellent for very gnarly clumps of mud. It can be stippled and smeared over the surface, creating very nice effects. Sort of like dense mounds of dirt which were torn by moving tracks. If the paste underneath is still somewhat soft, each layer is gonna bond together into a strong, homogeneous mass. My final texturing trick is to poke the paste with something pointy and sharp, such as this airbrush needle. The paste starts to dry when it comes into contact with air, and naturally it starts to dry from the outside, creating a thin crust. But the inside is still soft and we can use this to our advantage. But this is of course just the first layer that creates volume and texture, and now we have to refine it with enamel mud. We'll start with a dry tone, and this time I picked dry steppe instead of my favorite dry earth. It has a darker, warmer color, which I think will contrast nicely with this vivid camouflage. There are cases where I would do one more step before this one, and that's pre-dusting with an airbrush. It efficiently softens any harsh transitions between the clean tank's surface and textured mud. But considering how opaque these paints from ammo are, I didn't feel the need to do it. Another factor is how exposed this section of running gear is. Most of the time, our tanks have their lower hulls covered by tracks and wheels, but this huge structure that covers the suspension is right there in the open. This means our efforts will be easily seen by everyone, and that's pretty cool. But at the same time, if something goes wrong, you know. So anyway, I blended most of the stuff in a downward motion, creating dried up muddy streaking effects. Additional texture can be achieved with speckling. Splashes have some volume and texture, which makes them look more realistic than regular dust-colored paints, and the results are, like, really nice. Some of the specklings can be refined and blended into more streaks, making the effect even more gnarly. This is gonna be the main portion of weathering on this model, so naturally I wanted to make it look as good as possible, while at the same time keeping it somewhat subtle. And while I had the paint in my palette, I did a quick round of rudimentary weathering on the upper surfaces as well, mainly the sides where it can be blended into nice rain marks. These are gonna be most visible on the brown camouflage, and what a lucky coincidence, the brown is painted towards the bottom where most dust would accumulate. Alright, there's the model with the dry layer finished. So far we have nice textured thick mud made from acrylic paste and random accumulations and streaks of dust and dried mud. Now let's make it more interesting with darker, damp mud effects. Although I've bought several different colors, loose ground is still my all-time favorite when it comes to darker mud tones. It's just a nice blend between dark brown and grey. Not too vivid, not too bland. To emphasize the texture, I applied it in a very specific way. Because the previous layer is porous to some extent, it can easily soak up anything you put over it, and thus blending can be a little unpredictable. However, I wanted to bring out the texture as much as possible, so I applied it selectively over each textured clump of mud. Only on the visible portions, of course. Everything that's gonna be hidden in the shadows and out of sight was completely covered with it. Blending is also pretty interesting. On smooth surfaces, it's the usual ordeal, feathering the edges and spreading the effect outward, but on the heavy textured portions, we can just flood the surface with enamel thinner and let it dry. Because these paints are quite specific, they'll sort of blend themselves, seeping into one another, if that makes any sense. And as usual, once the thinner evaporates, additional mud can be added with speckling. And if necessary, any unwanted and oversized specks can be blended or wiped off. But honestly, I was quite happy with all of them. The final layer is wet mud. This is a concoction that I like using a lot, and it consists of the same loose ground as I used on the damp layer, but to make it darker and more translucent and glossier, I added a huge amount of enamel wet effects and a few drops of dark wash. I applied it in the same way as the previous effect, but in a smaller amount. This way we'll achieve a nice, interesting finish consisting of light and dry mud, darker damp mud, and very dark, glossy, wet mud. Naturally, the wet mud should be collected around the tracks and towards the rear. This way we can achieve a nice muddy gradient from the back of the tank towards the front. And of course, the amount depends on how muddy you want your model to be. My goal was more subtle than usual because I wanted the camouflage, pin washes, and chipping effects to be visible as well. But before I give you the final reveal of the lower hull, let's take care of the tracks and put them on the model, because, at least in my opinion, tanks don't look as cool without them. I bought metal frill model tracks because I didn't have too much luck trying to assemble the plastic workable Tamiya tracks which came with this kit. So, first we placed them in a plastic bowl, then we add some product placement, soak the toothbrush in the potion, and scrub. And we'll have to scrub them real good, making sure the blackening fluid gets into every crevice. It's awesome to observe how fast the fluid works. I was able to blacken both tracks in less than 10 minutes. When we're done, we need to wash them in soapy water, which will stop the chemical reaction and remove any residue. But because I'm on crutches, I wasn't able to film the process, but the results definitely speak for themselves. It always hurts me to cover up all this texture with mud, but I pinky promise, my next 1/35 scale model is gonna have its tracks like this. Alright, so let's repeat the same steps as we did on the lower hull. It's always easier on tracks and you can get very sloppy, but the result is still gonna look very nice. The first layer is again dried up mud, applied with a brush, and using the speckling method. After letting it become dry to the touch, I sanded all exposed portions, revealing the nice shiny metal underneath. These never look like much on dry tracks, but the contrast is gonna become more evident with the darker mud tones. Loose ground was brushed towards the middle part, because when tracks start to dry up, it usually begins on their sides, leaving the central part darker. And honestly, it looks pretty nice in my opinion. To make the effect even more natural looking, I added a lot of speckling. And again, you can get pretty heavy-handed and it's still gonna look good. And the strong metal tracks are gonna hold up. Then I wiped the excess away from those polished sections. This is gonna give them a darker, more steel-like appearance. And finally, we'll repeat the same process with the wet mud mixture. Again, brushing it towards the middle, speckling, wiping off the excess, and let's not forget the other side, which is more intricate and thus speckling will do just fine, no need to apply it with a brush. Then wipe off the excess and we're done. And hey, they look super chunky. and muddy and mean. Definitely not like some tracks from a quirky duck. Now I had to go through some serious track gymnastics because sliding them into these tight places full of jagged clumps of mud was no fun. Most normal, so to say, tanks are fine, but this one has to be special, so of course the tracks would give me a hard time. Final pin and boom! Now we can consider the lower hull finished, although I'm gonna do a couple of minor corrections. But hey, I think it doesn't look so cartoonish anymore, does it? This is definitely my favorite part of this model because, let's be real, the rest of the tank is just unique. And I don't want to be mean towards the poor Somua or anything. I mean, she's probably trying her best. So let's quickly finish the upper surfaces. As I said, the first round of rain marks was really just a first round. So now I'm applying it in a more focused way. Finishing the lower hull always gives you a better idea about the whole model, and you can easily pinpoint places where more dirt needs to be added. Rusty surfaces are completely flat, with a grainy texture that attracts dust, which means a speck of quick dust wash on the exhaust. I didn't want the top surfaces to be completely clean, so I applied some of the loose ground into crevices and into the smooth bends in the cast armor. Apart from making the tank dirtier, it's also gonna emphasize these shapes. And why loose ground, you might ask? Well, because it contrasts better with the mint green camouflage color. Now it's time for some of those final corrections, and in this case it mostly means renewing some of the lost contrast around hatches and the panel lines. I used the same oil paint as I did in the previous episode during the pin washing stage, and because oil paints flow so smoothly, no cleanup was necessary. I also added some stains of grime and oil on the engine deck. Some oily residue can always be expected here, be it a spill from an oil can or a grimy rug, and these substances attract dust like some dirt magnets, quickly turning into a dark goo. The best way to finish off any model is by doing the most boring technique ever, polishing the worn edges with a pencil. It's a small touch, but it really adds to the final appearance of your model, giving it a more metallic look. Just simply rub it against sharp edges where lots of chipping is present and you're golden. Or steel. The finalist step was brushing tiny amounts of black pigment around the exhaust pipes, and with that, the Frenchy duck was finished! I am super excited, my friends. Not because I have a Somua in my collection, I'm honestly not into this tank like at all, but because I can make a diorama for it. I haven't done a scenery or figure since the T29, so I'm actually trembling with anticipation. And if you're wondering, why in the world did I buy this model when I don't like the tank so much? Well, honestly I don't know. Back in 2016 or 2015, it was a brand new release from Tamiya, and it was one of those tanks which, didn't have a nice kit before, so it was like being able to purchase something unobtainable before, And it happens to me with many models, but the uniqueness rubs off as soon as you buy the kit. But on the other hand, I'm really glad to have a vivid colored tank in my collection. I think it's gonna stand out nicely next to all those olive drab and panzer grey tanks. And the diorama will take place in Belgium 1940. I have figures for it as well, so the next week we'll either paint them or I'll build and paint some rural features for it. Yep, we're gonna play with styrofoam again. But until then, I'd like to thank you for watching, I hope you liked the model, and let me give an honorable mention to my awesome patrons who helped me survive the everyday struggles of a YouTube modeler. I'm posting tons of additional content on my Patreon page. For example, you could watch the next video right now without any ads. I also post a lot of updates from my work, almost every day, and I like to write long tirades about it. There's also DMs and comments so we can talk about stuff, And also these super nice studio photos which cost me a lot of time and effort, and you can download them in full bazillion K resolution and use them as your own personal references or something. There are also small 3D accessories that you can print if you have a resin printer, and some real life references and ideas for dioramas if that's your thing. So that's all I've got, my friends. I was never happier to get a model off my workbench, but this time it's not for the best reasons. But hey, what you're gonna do? Sometimes you get excited about something and the hype goes away after a few hours. But I'm trying to live by my motto, keep building and finishing models, don't just collect them. And while you're at it, stay safe and stay awesome, because if you will, we'll see each other the next Friday. Cheers!